at the Preble Town Hall, Preble, New York, to consider enactment of the Town of Preble Comprehensive Plan. Any resident of the Town of Preble is entitled to be heard upon said comprehensive plan, and as such, public hearing. Copies of the said proposed comprehensive plan are available for review at the town clerk. That's dated December 14th, 2023. So, and concerning the comprehensive plan, does anybody have any questions or comments on it? Okay.
Could you explain what your comprehensive plan for what?
What's your name, please?
Scott Robinson.
Thank you.
This is an updated comprehensive plan. We've had the same comprehensive plan for many years, and as times change, we need to update it. One of the provisions that we recommend here is to create a separate district within the hamlet to provide a commercial application along with residential application. So that's the main difference in the comprehensive plan. There are some tweaks throughout it. Do you have a copy of it?
No.
Okay. Overall, Amy, is there anything you want to add to this about the comprehensive plan since you've been instrumental? Okay.
One of the main issues was this area where Uncle Tom's Store used to be. It's in R1 district.
Mhm.
There were small businesses here years ago before we had our zoning regulation, and that became an R1 district, which means after those uses subside, they can't do anything else with it but single family housing. So that was the main thing we did, was a hamlet district to allow for small businesses, small ones, grocery stores, things like that. That was the main issue, right?
Mhm.
And then we had some with lot coverage that has never been on our regulation before, so much land you can cover on your property, setbacks from lake areas, those kinds of things. They were minor.
Mhm. Right.
And that would all be in zoning once the comp plan is approved, that would go into zoning issues.
Mhm.
But the hamlet district we included in the comprehensive plan so that we could write regulations and zoning.
Right. The comprehensive plan should be updated about every 5 years. It should be reviewed,
I think
taken a look at.
we wrote that it would be updated every 2 years, I think.
Mhm. Mhm. So that's the bottom line of the comprehensive plan. Anybody have any questions or comments on this plan? And the comprehensive plan is a cornerstone for future development for the town also. It's what, when considering other development or zoning codes, we go back to the comprehensive plan for our foundation. All right, so we need to make a motion to adjourn, Don, from, okay,
Yes, sir.
yes, Peter?
McClure, planning board member.
Yeah.
I agree with Amy that that's one of the main things. The additions had to do with the hamlet district. There's a number of other considerations that the updated comprehensive plan calls for. One has to do with considering updating the subdivision regulations, using conservation subdivision design concepts. Another has to do with considering restrictions and or regulations for short-term rentals in all residencies. Another one has to do with promoting New York State DEC practices in large-scale farming and short-term farming. Another one has to do with considering restrictions and or regulations with respect to commercial solar arrays in the town. And lastly, another addition to the new comprehensive plan has to do with promoting public awareness of our aquifer protection district ordinance,
Mhm.
which has been around for a while,
Mhm.
but it calls for it to be promoted.
Mhm. Okay, thanks, Peter. Anybody else with anything? Okay, we need to make a motion to adjourn from the public hearing.
Make a motion to adjourn the public hearing.
No, second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Carried.
one further question,
Uh-huh.
Jim?
Yep.
Is the comprehensive plan going to go to county planning or is it already gone?
We've already sent it to, referred it to county planning,
Okay.
and we're
Yeah.
waiting for them.
Yeah, it's gone to
Have we
county
received,
planning.
Comments from
It's
them?
on their January agenda. Actually, I talked to the planning board today, and they're gonna have some comments
Okay,
that we're gonna need to consider. Perhaps further.
thanks.
Okay, we want to go into our next public hearing. Please take notice that a public hearing will be held at the town of Preble, by the town board on Monday, January 8th, 2023, at 7:10 PM at the Preble Town Hall to consider enactment of local law number 1 of 2024. Any resident of the town of Preble is entitled to be heard upon said such local law. Copies of the proposed local law are available through the town clerk. Don, can you give us an overview on this town law, please?
Yeah, the intent and purpose of the moratorium is to basically hold off any further development of short-term rental properties for the next 9 months to allow that issue, which, as we all know, has been much discussed, will probably be discussed further this evening, to be studied and provisions developed ultimately and approved by the town board as part of our zoning law to address that particular use within the town. So it's intended to prohibit any further new short-term rental properties in the interim while we try and get a law in place.
And existing short-term rentals can continue as usual.
That would be
right?
the intent of this. That's
Okay.
correct.
And this town law, this moratorium is for 270 days?
That's correct.
Okay. Anybody have any questions or comments about the proposed town law of a moratorium? Yes?
Do they have to register with the town for Airbnbs?
For the moratorium period?
Yes, or anytime, I guess. When-
There's no provision on the books at present that requires that.
But our code enforcement officer will be going around and enforcing this.
And that they can
Mhm.
Is that for, like, if someone just bought a house now, say, or he's going to buy a house now, did not make it into the
Correct.
It's just
When would
passed.
this date start, Don?
As soon as we enact it.
Okay.
And that had to be referred to county planning. We have not heard back from them.
Mhm.
They will have it, comments to us before February's meeting, or you could have a special meeting sooner, but by
Mhm.
February's meeting, I think is the first time we'll be able to actually enact the moratorium,
Okay.
because we must hear back from county planning.
Mhm.
So the moratorium wouldn't start this minute now.
That's correct.
So say I bought a house now.
Yes,
I bought a house now, that moratorium will not be.
it's not in effect today.
Mhm.
That's
Yes.
for all of Preble, right? All of Preble.
That's correct.
Parkville, York, and
The whole town.
Yes.
I was under the impression that the lake was zoned for single-family homes and that people were doing bed and breakfasts and people were letting that kind of go because the owner was there, but setting up short-term rentals on the lake wasn't zoned for that. And I'm hearing from people that it's like more and more and more are happening now. And I'm trying to figure out like who's minding the store.
Well, that's what we're trying to iron out during these months of these meetings. Because there's issues on both sides of this argument.
I'm not following. Or as least on the lake, it's zoned for single residence. And a person is not, there's no one living there, it's owned by a corporation. At the present time, before the moratorium would go into effect, or even in the past, why were people permitted to rent out on short-term basis? If it's single residence and there's no residence, it's a corporation owning it.
Well, there's property rights that we're dealing with, constitutional rights. People have been renting their homes out everywhere from the beginning of time, right, John?
Yes, sir. Yes.
And
People renting the houses out, but there's no one. But a short-term rental is not a person living there. In other words, I can understand full well, I own a house, I rent it out for a year to someone. But
We
just
understand, as Mr. Doring said, there are arguments on both sides of this as to the allowed use aspect. And I mean, rather than rehash, and sir, I know your question, it's a good one, but we're trying to address it now. We can't go back, and maybe there's no great adequate explanation to your question. But we're trying to move forward to address it now.
So you mentioned constitutional law and the laws of the individual versus like corporation. I'm aware that corporations do have some aspect of personhood. Can we potentially have like a quick rundown of like what the constitutional rights of an individual versus of a corporation are and where the potential tensions are? Because I think that might make it a little easier to determine going forward.
I need to interrupt. When everyone is speaking, I need everyone's name for the minutes, please.
My name is Leah.
Last name?
Jaser.
J-E-Z-E-R. Thanks.
well,
We're not really prepared to get into constitutional law tonight. Maybe Joe would like to address that, but
Bring a book with you?
again, good questions, but you know, we're trying to sort this out. And there's been a lot of discussion. There's been a lot of discussion about potential regulation. You know, there's the potentials are from prohibition to not doing anything. And so there's been much discussion. There will be more discussion such as this evening. Again, this right now is a moratorium, and it's to try and put a lid on things till over the next 9 months to allow the planning board to finish doing their work and putting together a proposed zoning ordinance, who would then hand it over to the town board, who would ultimately be responsible for enacting the ordinance, which the ordinance, by the way, would have a lot more in it than the short-term rental issue.
Joe?
I'm very much in favor of this moratorium. Would really appreciate the town finally taking this step. Since we were here the last time, at least one new Airbnb has been purchased and it's in the process of renting out. So it's very good that we can use this reasonable method. Towns use it all the time. Don knows that. This town has used it effectively while we come across a new problem. We did it with fracking. It's a very reasonable way. It's very necessary now. There are a lot of people that live on the other side of our lake that have seen places open next to them almost like rabbits. So it's a very good thing. It'll give us time to regulate it, to think about it, and also, although we have some pretty different views expressed here each time we come here, there may be middle ground. There may be a way to regulate these for local owners that won't upset the folks that are already relying on them, but also stop the proliferation of these things. So it's a very good thing that you're considering this moratorium. Thank you.
Thanks for your comment, Joe. Anybody else?
Yes, Scott Robinson. I have a daughter who is now managing the entire Finger Lakes regarding Airbnbs. Every township is dealing with it. For example, Skinny Atlas, they zoned it into just the village. They won their case about having Airbnbs within the village, but not the entire town area. But she says that almost every township is dealing with it now. And there's all kinds of things that come up. regarding how many people can be in the dwelling. Has the dwelling been approved for fire, septic, the condition of the building? The number of people that get to stay is based on the number of beds or bedrooms and bathrooms. And there's so many loopholes that towns have covered up to prevent, for example, someone coming in and renting a place, and then they back in an RV and a trailer the time they're staying there. Well, that wasn't part of the Airbnb, so they were trying to eliminate those kinds of things. The other thing, for those that live on a lake, I mean, if you have an Airbnb in town, you're not launching a boat on a private lake. So Airbnbs actually, technically, are now opening up Song Lake, which is classified by the DC as a private lake. There's no public access, but these Airbnbs are providing public access. And it's up to the town to develop what you call this special use permit by the zoning and code to have these restrictions. And they need to renew their application. Have they applied to New York State for a business certification? There's a lot of things that should be done to control the environment of an Airbnb. It's endless. There were towns that even had to go to how many days a year can you rent your short-term rental out. Some towns have gone to 180 days or 200 days. What is short-term rental? Towns have listed it as 29 days or less would be a short-term rental, and that you're not being approved in renting out places by the month would be beyond what would be termed short-term. The issue for me, and I think others, is that the Airbnbs on a lake, the town needs to consider, does that give them permission to put boats in on the private lake? They're not residents. It's a private lake. Who gives them permission? What they've done in the past in these other townships, my daughter told me, is that it's up to the owner to provide a watercraft, perhaps, and not, these towns have not allowed rental people, renters, to launch boats. Because, and this lake here, Song, is unique because there is no public access to Song Lake. You can rent an Airbnb at Little York. You don't care whether the guy says you can launch a boat or not. You just go down to the pavilion, pay your fee, launch the boat. There's a boat launch over on Tully Lake that has been narrowed down to where you're not going to put a big boat in, but you can put in a rowboat, a carry-on, a canoe, kayaks, but that's public access. Our concern, at least my concern, is that we are classified a private lake, and Airbnbs will then allow the public to use the lake.
The variables that you bring up seem to be endless, but it's going to be the town board, the planning board, and zoning board that will have to sift through a lot of this and decide what it is the town of Preble wishes to apply as far as their zoning law.
Yes. What I wanted to mention was that there's the Bolton ordinance, the Seneca Fall ordinance, the town of Penn Yan, which is a pending plan now, and the Gorham town code, short-term rentals. I mean, are they gonna look at other townships and what they've done to be able to compromise
Yes.
so that you can have, I mean, we've had Airbnbs on our lake. There's 20 cars parked all over the lawn. There's 50 people there. People sleeping in tents or they sleep in their car and my issue is I don't have that. Years ago, those homes that were down facing Song Mountain, one name with Kennedy was mentioned. There were 3 lots for sale and they were up for auction and they all were going to have lake rights next to my house, which was Genevieve Griswold, the owner. She owned the right of way and she owned the property. So fortunately, I was a friend of her grandson. I called and I said, I can't have 3 families down here next to my house with an easement right away. And the parents or whatever are up half a mile down the road sitting on the deck. They have no idea what's going on. So I purchased that lot the night before the auction. And when they announced that these 3 lots will no longer have lake rights, everybody left. So it was the intent to build a place, it's not on the lake, but have access to the lake. And this was the issue this town has already dealt with the subdivision that's gone along Song Lake Road with 2.5 acre lots. They were all going to have lake rights, and the town decided that that wasn't going to cut it. So we don't have homes being built across away on the mountainside of Song Lake Road that have access to the lake. Although when I bought the lot, there were already 2 right-of-ways on it, which would be the original Hollenbeck yellow farmhouse down the road, and then the Merrills that sold across the lake and then built, but since have sold. So I feel that I've committed my share at Song Lake by preventing 3 houses down the lake just coming in and getting on the lake when they don't live on the lake. And this is what's going on with the Airbnbs is that I don't have one next to me. I probably would have if I didn't buy the lot. There would have been something built there. But I think people need to really think about, I bought on Song Lake because of what it is. And I don't know if I could handle different neighbors every weekend or every other day or whatever, people just coming and staying in a residential area. We don't even know who they are. There's no indication, there's no communication. And there's been issues, but I think there's a lot of things that need to be limited for those that rent. In other words, the other big thing was that people were renting a place and then hosting fishing tournaments. And there's 20 cars there and boats put in. And in most cases, if you're on them, she manages the Finger Lakes. Well, you can't really call Song Lake a Finger Lake. You can see from one end to the other almost wherever you are. So the impact of Airbnbs on these bigger lakes has less of an impact than what would happen here on Song Lake. And we are different than any other lake. We are private. We have no public access, and Airbnbs provide public access. And is the town going to allow renters to put boats in the lake?
All these things are going to be up for consideration.
Yeah. Yeah.
We-
I just wanted to bring attention to
No.
the fact that I was fortunate to have a family member that's actually managing the Finger Lakes with just exactly what we're talking about. And it's not by the lake, it's by the townships
Mhm.
have all instituted short-term rental restrictions.
Thank you for your comment.
Yes.
Anybody else? Yes.
So I've heard a lot about like us being stewards of humans, and I think that's also a really important consideration considering we live around the lake. But also, I think Leah Jazer, there's the consideration of the responsibility we have to the area we live in. We're really lucky that we live in a place that's not affected heavily by tornadoes or hurricanes or really
Yeah.
any major natural disasters. It's a
Hopefully.
pretty,
Wait
knock on
for
wood.
ours.
But we've already seen, I'm not that old, I'm 25 years old, but even in my lifetime, I've seen zebra mussels take over the lake. That's what it is. There's a lot of places, but it's particularly sad when it's such a small, unique place. And I think with every consideration, with every new group of people brings a whole new set of variables. I mean, there was that group of people in Southern California. They were having a gender reveal party. They rented an Airbnb. They sent off like those, I don't know, poppers or whatever, set off one of the biggest wildfires in California state history. Clearly, California is not New York, but the world is changing around us faster than we can manage it. So I think it's also important to recognize that you will take better care of the place where you live and have lived for generations than will people coming in with boats. And the more cars you have on the road, the more deer strikes there are going to be. The more deer strikes there are going to be, the more issues become. So I think everything has to be considered in balance with the natural world we live in as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Ted Dickinson. I'm gonna live next to like 15 bedrooms for rent. The guy next to me owns both places next to me. He's got one that's gonna have 6 in it. There's a place behind him he's gonna redo and probably have 4 more in that. And he owns the one next door to that. So literally I got 15 bedrooms next to me to the north. And a bed and breakfast and a rental property to the south from me. Lovely neighbors or not. And an empty lot with a boat launch, like he says. So, where am I with 15 bedrooms next to me for rent? And they've had small school buses come in with loads of people. I seen the neighbors, they rented the house Friday. They walk right across the street and into the empty lot across the street, the wooded lot. No damage, no harm, but it is private property. It's not theirs. One went over and he called the other guy over. Reasons unknown, but that's what I'll be living next to, 15 bedrooms for rent. And 2 doors down is a rental property that shouldn't be there, but the town has let go because of nobody complains. And the one next to that is a bed and breakfast that just went online, or a B&B, with probably 3 bedrooms. That's it.
Thank you. Anybody else? Maria?
I need to go down to New York City pretty often, and we used to go to the B&Bs. New York City has put a moratorium on B&Bs. Why? They don't have a lake, noise, all sorts of reasons. So it's not only the small towns, but the larger cities. I wouldn't be too surprised if at one point there'll be a state legislation about this. But even New York City has said, we can't deal with this. We can't deal
There's
with
so
the
many
noise.
different
We can't.
variables that renters will attempt to do.
Yeah.
There was an issue with renters down the south end of the lake, being out on a boat fishing. My neighbor told me that the dad came over and wanted to know what kind of fish are in the lake because they don't know. And that he said, my son has been snagging these huge carp.
Oh.
And fortunately, Scott Collier, who's on our lake association, said that we paid to have those carp put in. They're grass carp. They eat the weeds. And he was snagging them with a snatch hook, thinking, I don't know what he was thinking, other than, there are things, that are in the lake even, that renters don't know what or why they're there.
Or care.
Becomes an issue. Yeah, I just think that there's, when you bring people in that are only gonna be there for a few days, I don't think they're worried about how much noise they make, how many, the one town did away with no renters can fire off fireworks. Because what was happening is every nice night, the fireworks are going off, not just the 4th. We have a 4th of July celebration, maybe a day either side. But there were all these things, parking, how many, are you parking cars along Song Lake Road because the whole lot you're renting in places full of cars and no place to park.
Oh, can I ask, is there anyone opposed to the moratorium? That's what this public hearing is about, is opposing on the
I have a
moratorium.
question about the moratorium. Some of the concerns expressed today talk about the establishment of new things and certain developments that are happening right now. Will the moratorium speak to those new developments that are happening right now? or
Peter,
not?
that's the difficult, that's not a black or white, potentially. It'll be effective when it's enacted. And
it's
it'll
currently
prohibit
not enacted.
as of enacted.
Right.
And that's why I was just checking my phone that you could do a public or a special board meeting 2 weeks from now, because the planning board meets on the 17th. You know, that would be the soonest, you know, if you wanted.
You would
Yeah.
save 2 weeks.
Yeah.
No.
But in terms of the moratorium itself, I think everyone is in favor of it.
What I,
Then the actual legislation will be, believe me, you're going to see drafts of it, and you'll have opportunity to comment on that when it's proposed.
what I don't understand is if we have zoning for a single residence, what is it not being enforced?
This issue really didn't come up. No one brought it up until we got into changing the zoning ordinance and the comprehensive plan. No one brought it up until not that long ago. Maybe that's an overstatement. That's an overstatement.
We brought it
But-
here a few years ago.
Right. But it has not been a hot topic. It has not been one for legislation.
Isn't it on the books that it has to be single and not people not using this as
That's a matter of litigation, ultimately.
because that would apply to people who have it now.
Agreed.
Okay, if we have,
Yeah, I mean, I'm against the moratorium, even though I have a short-term rental and
Yeah,
obviously we're gonna be grandfathered in for the moratorium because we're already existing. But I think people get wrapped up into all the bad things. I've never seen one bad thing, been doing it for 5 years. The other thing you have to think about is, where does it stop? People keep going after somebody's property rights, and you gotta be careful. A couple years ago, someone's parking an RV, and now you can't do that for more than 7 days. Somebody spent $100,000 probably buying an RV, and now they gotta move it every 7 days. They gotta come home for a month, and then maybe they take a trip and they come home for a month. Where does it stop? I think you just have to ask yourself a little bit of that. We haven't had any problems, so I don't, But again, like I said, we're not gonna be affected with this moratorium. But I just think we have to be careful as a town of where does it stop? We can keep going round and round.
well, we want to wrap up this.
Wait, I'll make it real
Go
short.
ahead.
You mentioned something about Mr. Fritz maybe going around.
Mhm.
He's the zoning officer.
He's the
for
code
people who
enforcement
don't know.
officer. Yeah.
Well, Preble zoning ordinance says single-family dwelling is defined in definition section 210 out of your books. It's right here in this town. They say a detached residential dwelling designed for and occupied by one family only. Nobody lives in these houses. No one gets their mail there. Nobody does. And the other thing, in section 512, the only permitted use in an R1L district are single-family dwellings in seasonal homes. These are not seasonal homes, and they're not single-family dwellings. They've changed their status per the Preble zoning ordinance rules. So what is being done about it? They're not single families living here anymore. They are not. They're businesses. And basically they're hotels. You call them anything you want to. They're hotels. People stay 1 and 2 days. That's it. That's it. So enforce the rules. The moratorium's a good thing. At least it'll end the proliferation that's going on now. I mean, these folks right here, their family's been 60 years. They've been there. And they're gonna have 15 bedrooms around them. Nobody at this table, nobody in here, including these gentlemen, want that next to them. But that's exactly what's happening. Something's got to be done, and I appreciate that the moratorium is happening. We're moving in a direction. It's better than nothing, but I know this was brought up a couple years ago. Okay, I'm done.
Okay,
I
thank
will
Thank you.
say one
And
more
I'm Mr.
thing
Droege.
about all this, is that, you know, I bought a little cottage, put over $250,000 into it, made it a nice home, improved everyone's property values. No one cared, no one bothered me when I was putting in 200 grand, but now everybody wants to bust my chops because we're trying to regain some money. You know, it's a little ridiculous. It's like communism.
With all due respect,
And
everybody
I'm
that's
not
like.
talking
Abort.
about
That's
now.
not being argued, is
All
it?
direction,
Now,
all
the other
comments
thing
to the
is-
board,
is
please.
I have a neighbor just north of me. They don't live there. They live in Virginia. They rent it out all summer long. They don't advertise though. They come up for a couple weeks in the summer, and then there's random people, transient people, whether it's family, friends, or whatever. You shutting them down? What are you gonna do with those people? They've been doing it for 15, 20 years. They're great people. Their house is beautiful, but it's not them coming.
Okay, so this is about the moratorium.
And Pete
Go
Thorman,
ahead.
Doug Lane.
Mhm.
I'm the caretaker for the property he's speaking of, and they have not rented it out in years. Not every week like he's saying.
People go there and it's not them. I've kicked them off of my floating.
Address the
docks.
board, please.
People go there and it's not them. I know who they are.
Probably be
I know
better
where they
not to
live.
interrupt other speakers.
So you don't want to hear me speak, you can like. So
Who wants to
I
hear
don't
you?
want to, you know, it is a rental, whether they're charging money or not. They're transient people, whether it's family or not. It's not them. All summer long. And I think it's great. More use of the lake is fantastic. So, you know, don't just hammer the people who are maybe trying to make a few dollars. People have been renting their places on this lake for 100 years.
my name,
Again, I will just reiterate, that's not so.
It is so, because I see other people who are not there, who are not them, they're
This is
there.
for
every summer.
comments and questions, not arguments.
Pete Thorman.
Go ahead, Pete.
These are cyclical questions and arguments being had right now. And what I think we need to focus on is the moratorium.
Mhm.
And so not everything that we're saying is getting heated, but the fact of the matter is we're just pushing forward the idea that town and the planning board and zoning board need this time to work on these issues so that we can come to a common ground.
Mhm.
And what I'm going for, and I'm going to play devil's advocate here for a second. When someone says, well, you need a certain amount of parking for a short-term rental or even a rental property, would that apply to people who have pig roasts or 4th of July parties or anything of that nature? I'm just stating that as an example, what needs to be worked out in the time of this moratorium moving forward.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Yes,
Yes.
Steve Seuss, live on Salt Lake also. Gentleman spoke there a little bit about how wide-ranging these controls on people's lives are. For me, and for many of us, and I think Skip alluded to it also, is when a business, a commercial establishment purchases property, refurbishes it and is now going to rent that's clearly different than a resident living there. They have ownership of that area. They care about that area. If anyone's ever lived in the city when you were young and then those places have turned into rentals, it is not the same residence, the same neighborhood that it was years ago when people owned their homes. They don't have that same ownership, and they don't, some of it is also just simply people don't know. I think I've heard Scott say people don't know when they go out in the lake that they're not supposed to be pulling carp out. People may not know what some of the safety aspects are of the lake. So there's all sorts of that. I get all that, and I can see that being worked out in the moratorium What I don't understand and what is clear in this, in your zoning ordinance, is this is a residential area, R1, with the lake suffixed after it, which even makes it a little more concerning, right? And yet, we have businesses that are being set up that they don't live there, that they own the building, they're gonna have people take care of it, and they're gonna rent people out, but there's nobody there physically living that is a resident. Didn't that cross the line according to this zoning ordinance, that alone? I guess I just have to understand that part of it. You know, the moratorium's gonna handle this, and I don't want to, you know, as Henry the wife, who was it, Henry said this many wives, I won't keep you long. But I'm kind of relief here, all right? And we all get heated up, and that part of it I don't understand. We pay taxes, we have a zoning officer, we have an attorney, and we're setting up business, and it's clear that the trend is heading that way. So I don't begrudge this gentleman for making money on this. I think it's great, but the times have changed from when they were rentals and only people local might know about it, or people that might read the newspaper. Now it's on the internet. People can come from all places in the country. So I'm hoping that this moratorium is going to clearly define that you can't just start a business and refurbish houses. And I know a number of people that have sold houses now, they've sold them to business, concerns. So it's clear they're going to become Airbnbs, and you can see that trend going on and on and on. So I think that's what's brought, for me at least, the attention to this concern.
Thank you for your comment. Anybody else?
Well, if you enforce, it's not Dickinson, if you enforce the law that Skip just stated, why are we having this discussion?
Why do we need a moratorium until?
Yeah, why are we having a moratorium? If you enforce the law, we wouldn't be here.
Right.
That's true.
We're thankful for the moratorium. We are for it.
Yes, but I don't see why we got to this situation in the first place.
Maybe the moratorium can reiterate what
What's in
our
black and
zoning
white?
laws say right now.
I'm sorry, actually, I have one more question, Lou. So those businesses that are on the south end of the lake that we referred to, some 15 bedrooms, are they gonna slip under the wire on this before the moratorium gets? I mean, are they gonna be kind of, that's
Yeah,
another.
when does it have to be up?
You know, you want the answer to the question, you end up in court,
Yeah.
okay?
And
You
that's
want an answer to a
this,
question, that's where you end up.
so this zoning ordinance has no precedent then? That wouldn't take precedent? I don't expect a hard
If
answer,
you
but
would-
it just seems like,
You,
I'm just a simple layman here reading simple layman terms here. It just seems simple.
and it's been argued, and he's not here tonight, but there's arguments on both sides. I'm just gonna say that, okay? So it doesn't matter what I say. Or it doesn't matter what the other attorney said. What matters is what a court of law says. And we can say black and white, and that's fine, but I tell you what, you get it into court of law, it's shades of gray. What looks black and white to an individual oftentimes is not that way when you get into court. So I'll say that much.
I understand. I
Okay.
guess I figured something like zoning and residential in the lake, that seemed to be pretty, I didn't assume that it didn't have that many variables that created gray area. It seems like now that we've allowed it, and then there's so many exceptions, now we've created this monster that we're trying to get everything back into the barn, if you will, and it's not gonna happen until we're ready to start compromising this.
And I
We
suppose,
need a moratorium.
yeah, and those people that we trust and that we elected, we're hoping will stand by what we have. Yeah, they can bring in big lawyers, but this is our town board. This isn't some bunch and a king coming in here. This is our town board, and we're just relying on you to look into it and say, this is the way it should be. So, you know, I think that's why so many people are here too, to plead with you people that we elected happily, and you're doing a good job to be on our side. You're here for us.
Fundamentally, there's a difference between a lemonade stand that I can go down the road, buy 10 cents cup of lemonade, and go to go to Walmart and pick up a powdered Country Made thing. I think that's kind of the difference between the two things, but my 2 cents.
Can I
10
just say
cents.
briefly, all these Airbnbs that these townships have developed a short-term special permit for, every one of them say the owner of the property or the manager or management of the property must be available 24/7 and reveal the name, the address, and the phone number of those to contact if there is an issue.
But
And what's
notably,
happened-
note that that's a regulation that allows that as a use. It's a condition of the use. It is not a prohibition.
Right.
Okay? So that's in part what's debated here, the debate, regulation, and if so, what is the regulation? Regulation means there is some allowed use under some conditions. And that's what in part is being struggled with the planning board and the town board. You're talking about regulations. You're not talking about prohibitions. So what it seems like many of these towns regulate. Okay, so that's one of the main items here. Regulation, prohibition.
Pete Thorman again. Do we have any idea when we'd hear back from the county planning board? Because it sounds like we gotta get a hitch to the video.
That's what I just said. The
Right.
the planning board meets on the 17th.
17th.
So
No, that's the county.
that's the
planning-
county
okay.
planning board. And I would expect that we.
Yeah.
Well, that
we-
issue I just brought up have been problems with some of the rental. And there was no way of getting in contact that who is responsible for bringing the renters in to the property and into the lake. People are having trouble finding out, well, who owns it, who manages it? And these are things that townships have done through the process of zoning.
I can tell you, Scott, that's been discussed pointedly by your planning board. That's been one of the things that we've
Yes.
discussed.
Yes,
So it's
As
not,
well as the regulations, if they are established.
sure.
that could
Yeah.
be required.
And
No, I just
possibly-
say, we're a little behind with what's going on Song Lake. And I just say, it's different than if you rent an Airbnb in town or in the country. You're not putting a boat in on a lake. And that is the issue with me, which I hope the planning board and other zoning things realize that you are opening the public up onto a private lake.
There's a lady behind you that would like
I
to.
was just wondering if there could be some kind of thing added that would have penalties, that you would have some kind of monetary penalties if things didn't go the way it should.
You certainly have to design in an ordinance, penalties, consequences for.
Not as a part of the
In
moratorium,
order
if
to-
regulations are
Right,
established.
that's a
That would be
regulation.
required.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Well, I just have a fast question. I'm sorry to keep it going. Say there is a rental now, say the owner is not there, say the neighbors want to do something. Can they call our zoning officer and ask them to come and just kick them out or something because it's not according to a one-family house?
All those conditions gonna have to be ironed out in some way. So we're not there yet, but, you know, we're moving in a direction that will define some of those variables. Yes?
Just a quick one.
Mhm.
These rentals at this point, are they being taxed as residences? Or are they being taxed as a business?
You mean property tax?
Property tax, school tax,
They're being property taxed according to their assessed value.
but as a residence or as a business?
Whatever.
Does the town benefit from any money that's coming into that owner?
The town benefits from higher assessed valuations. So if somebody puts $250,000 into their property, the town will benefit from that.
The county gets the bed tax as well.
The county gets the bed tax.
Okay.
But I think when our attorney was here last time, he had said that there's some wording that the town could get a piece of that as well, but
Right.
I guess there's gotta be some special stuff.
As of right now, we don't get that.
Yeah, right,
Okay.
but the county does. The
Yeah.
county gets an extra tax.
The county.
County.
Yes?
2 months behind.
Mr. DeRocher again. When I met with Mr. Fritz, the town zoning person, Basically, he said these places were in violation. That's what he said, quote. And I asked him if I could quote him, and he said yes. He said, you can't just go around changing something that you want to change if there's nothing already in the ordinances that says that it's a specific to that thing that you're changing. So if that's true, then he's basically told me, and also Ted over there, because Ted met with him too. He said basically the same thing, that they are in violation.
I think we have to go back to what Mr. Armstrong
Okay, and
told us
I'm just
a few
making a
minutes ago.
statement, Jim,
Yeah.
of what Mr. Fritz said. So, and you said that he might be going around, so hopefully is aware of how many of them there are now and stuff. Because what started out as 1 is up to 7 and growing. And then in a few more months, if we don't get something done.
Well, if we can get this
Yeah,
enacted.
we're working on it, Don. We're working on it.
We could get this moratorium in place.
Do you get the feeling we're concerned?
I'm concerned that we can get to that point.
Okay, at this time, we're going to close the more, public
We'll have a
hearing for the
moratorium.
Let's close the public hearing for the moratorium and begin our regular town board meeting.
One more quick question. You said something about 2 more weeks, Don. What happened to that?
We haven't, we're in a public hearing.
Yeah, but you
To
said
take
something
any
about-
action, the board needs to get to the regular meeting. If they determine that they wish to have a special board meeting, we could enact it, I believe, in 2 weeks' time.
Okay.
Because by then, the county planning board will have met and get us their recommendations. We cannot enact till we hear from county planning. And they have their own schedule.
Can we go to that meeting?
Unlike this, the public is not, they can allow you to speak, but you have no right to speak at county planning. And again, there's a
We're lay
clar-
people,
cla-
explain it to us.
clarification. Again, the only issue tonight is the enactment of the moratorium, not the ultimate legislation or terms thereof. By state law, we must, for a local law, we have to refer generally to county planning for their review and input. They don't decide, they make recommendations, yay or nay, or improve it this way, or what about that? We have to hear back from them on their recommendations regarding our proposed moratorium before we can then take action. Okay, so that's the process. Once we enact it, then we have to file it with the state of New York. Once it hits the state, then it's truly law. And that would be a couple days after our special board meeting, if that's what the board decides to do. So it could be enacted as soon as 2 weeks from tonight, and then it would be filed a couple days thereafter. That doesn't answer this gray area that's been brought up. You know, I can't answer this property, yay, that property, nay, you know, I mean, the law would be on the books, and then we try and implement the law.
This is gonna move along one step at a time, and it's a process. But that's the way we have to do it.
Thank you for the explanation.
You're welcome. Okay, we need a motion to close the public hearing.
I make a motion to close public hearing. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Please stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This is the Preble Town Board meeting of January 8th, 2024. Are there any corrections, additions, or deletions to the minutes from December?
I make a motion to accept them. I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye. I did.
Carried. Jen?
Dog control, no report. Justice report, December fines collected were $7,822.50.
Thanks, Jen. Highway report, Jeff is not here, but he did leave a written report for us. Recreation, nobody from recreation. County Legislature, Kevin, you're up.
After that crew, I don't know what I want to do anything here. Jeepers. Well, all legislators were elected. We have 4 new legislators coming on board. I was reappointed for chairman for 2 more years for that. We haven't even had meetings yet, start until tomorrow for that. So I'll have a better update for you. Unless anyone has a question, if anyone's read the newspaper, I don't know. Anything you want squashed or answered, just ask me. Be happy to. So,
Okay, thanks, Kevin.
yeah.
All right. Jen?
Zoning and code enforcement December report. 4 building permits issued, 77 miles traveled, 19 building inspections, 41 hours worked, 2 fire inspections, 4 complaint follow-ups, 28 telephone inquiries. The next planning board meeting is January 24th at 7 p.m. The next CBA meeting is February 1st at 7:30 p.m. No report from the historian. Town clerk fees collected in December, $375. Dispersed $362 to the town of Preble and $13 to New York State Ag and Market.
Thank you, Jen. Unfinished business, LED lighting, Jim?
That's in process now, so we've submitted the payment for that, so we're waiting for National Grid.
Okay. Comprehensive plan, we just had a public hearing about that. And so Don, if you could just reiterate the process here for the comprehensive plan.
Sure.
Mhm.
Similar, and the comments I anticipate from the county planning board to be a little bit more involved because the comprehensive plan is more involved. And I did, as I said, I did speak with Trish and Gina, who is new in the office today, and they are working on it. And it will be before the planning board for their review. So staff, as I understand it, staff reviews what we submit, staff gives input, prepares like a report, I think, to the volunteers that serve on the county planning board. They meet on the 17th. They will review and they'll make a determination as to what their recommendations are. And we would certainly have it by our February meeting. But again, we must have that before we can take action.
Okay. Next item, the moratorium for short-term rentals.
Same thing. If
Same
you
process.
want to try and move it up, Jim, we could have a public or a special board meeting in a
Mhm.
couple weeks' time.
We can do that if we could be like 95% sure that it's going to be done by that date.
I talked to them and I asked them that today,
Mhm.
and they said yes.
Okay, okay. So if we want to make a public, a special board meeting for 2 weeks from tonight, we can do that. Does anybody want to make a motion to do that?
I'll make a motion to have a special meeting on January 22nd to review the county planning board's recommendations.
And possible enactment of the moratorium.
Yeah, possible enactment of the moratorium.
And that would be at 7 p.m. on Monday, 2 weeks from today. Any second on that?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Carried. Okay. I have a meeting in 2 weeks from tonight, 7 o'clock. Okay, we have the reappointment of Michael Hughes to the Board of Assessment Review. Do we need a motion for an appointment, Don? Or
Yeah,
We're
you
appointing
do.
him.
Yes, you do.
we're reappointing him.
Yep.
Yeah.
If his term is expired,
Mhm.
right, you need a
Okay,
motion.
So we need a motion for Michael Hughes.
I'll make a motion to appoint Michael Hughes to the Board of Assessment Review.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Carried. New business. Review list of criteria and appointments for 2024. Code Enforcement Officer is Rick Fritz. Deputy Supervisor, Jim Harris. Deputy Highway, Kevin Baldwin. Bookkeeper, Gina Norris. Historian, Jay Curry. Budget Officer, Jim Doring. Registrar of Vital Statistics, Jennifer George. Justice Clerk, that's open right now, that's vacant. Assessor, William Barrett. Dog Control, Country Acres, Animal Shelter, Lindsay Anderson. Board of Assessment Review is Thomas Harris, Judah Curry III, Michael Compton, Michael Hughes. Town board meetings will be held throughout the year of 2024 at 7 p.m. on the second Monday of the month in the Town Hall in Preble. Official newspaper, Portland Standard. Official bank, NBT Bank. Attorneys, the firm of Pomeroy, Armstrong, and Casulo. Don Armstrong with the Town Board, ZBA, and the Planning Boards. Utility bills will be paid in advance as necessary when the due date is before the Town Board regular meeting. Salaries, town officials, and contracts, as stated in the budget of 2024, will be paid monthly, semi-monthly, quarterly, or annually. Mileage, business mileage outside the town is 67 cents per mile. Review investment and procurement policy to remain the same. We want to reappoint Amy Bertini to the Planning Board and Nancy Daly to the ZBA Board, to the ZBA. Need resolution stating the town judge and court books were reviewed on December 28th, 2023. Need a resolution to extend property tax collection to May 31st, 2024. Can we make one motion to cover all of that?
Yep. Someone would make
Need
that
a motion to approve all of those conditions.
I make a motion to approve all those motions to reappoint Amy Bertini, Nancy Daly, and a resolution stating the town judge and court books were reviewed on 12/28/23, and a resolution to extend the property tax collection to May 31st, 24.
Need a second?
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
Carried. We received from the Department of Transportation $185,379.56. Received from New York State Comptroller, Department of Tax and Finance, $107.28. Received from USPS, $779 for rent. We received from Northeast Transformers, $1,771.89. We now open up our meeting to the public comment and questions. If anybody has a public question or comment about anything that we just went over or things in general, I think we already talked about the moratorium and that topic quite thoroughly. If anybody has anything else that they wanted to discuss, please feel free. Okay, we're going to go into executive session tonight. The board is going to continue to discuss the situation for short-term rentals. But before that, we will pay the bills. We need a motion to pay the general fund vouchers.
Make a motion to pay general fund vouchers, abstracts numbers 1, numbers 1 through 12 totaling $6,906.65.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Carried. We need a motion to pay the highway fund vouchers.
I'll make a motion to pay the highway fund vouchers, abstract number 1, numbers 1 to 7, totaling $9,235.15.
Second.
All in favor? Carried.
And just to expand on that, the executive sessions, because it's a potential litigation matter.
Right. Thank you, Don.
So we need a motion to go into exec.
Need a motion to go into executive session.
Make a motion for executive session.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Carried. Thanks for coming, Kevin.
Congratulations on your reappointment.
Thank you, guys.
ever see out by the grill.
Oh, really?
It's a hard job if someone has to do it.
There you go.
Well, yeah, that would go, I guess.
Yeah. Sound like you're gonna fuss with black people.
You're welcome. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah, thanks, Rick. Yep, yeah.
Bye-bye.
See you, Deb.
Have a good evening.
See you, Rick. Yeah. Getting there.
Have a good evening, gentlemen.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming,
Good evening.
everybody.
Oh, yeah.
See you, Tony.
If you're lonely or
Take
anything
care.
like that.
So, you know, the thing that these people don't understand is that
I think that, was that even on? I don't think it was on.
It looks like it's been videoing because it says over an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah,
In the corner
froze
there.
or something. I noticed that when you turned
What?
over to Don, it didn't look like it was on, doing anything.
Oh, I just turned it off.
Yeah.
Well, all that should be recorded.